60 million people died during the war. 20 million soldiers and 40 million civilians. They died because of starvation, disease, massacre, bombardment, and deliberate genocide. Most of Europe's great cities were destroyed. And also its industry was hard hit. Welcome everyone. This is Daan Heuvelman, and my name is Michael Kost. And we are going to tell you something about the Marshall Plan. The presentation will take up to 15 minutes, around 10-15 minutes. And if you have any questions, you can ask them later on, after the presentation, please. What is the Marshall Plan? Well, the Marshall Plan was a large-scale operation set up by the Americans to give aid to a war-devastated Europe. Their main goal was to fight communism, because during the war Russia also gained a lot of power, and they wanted to prevent that. The plan began in 1948 and lasted for 4 years, so it was up to 1952. The operation's other goals were to rebuild a war-devastated Europe, to remove trade barriers, and to modernize their industry, and also to make Europe prosperous again. And now we have a short movie.
We have given much aid to the impoverished peoples of Europe on simple humanitarian grounds. But as a countermeasure against the attempt by the Soviet Union to communize Europe, the American people saw the necessity for cooperating with the non-communist countries in a comprehensive, bipartisan European recovery program, passed by Congress and here being signed by President Truman. This program, known also as the Marshall Plan, is designed to afford eligible nations that margin of help in credit and materials which they need to bring their overall economy back to health. Secretary of State Marshall, in placing the plan before Congress, stated,
"Why must the United States carry so great a load in helping Europe? The answer is simple. The United States is the only country in the world today which has the economic power and productivity to furnish the needed assistance. The 6 8/10 billion proposed for the first 15 months is less than a single month's charge of the war. To be quite clear, this unprecedented endeavor of the new world to help the old is neither sure nor easy. It is a calculated risk. It is a difficult program. And you know far better than I do the political difficulties involved in this program. But there's no doubt whatever in my mind that if we decide to do this thing, we can do it successfully. And there's also no doubt in my mind that the whole world hangs in the balance as to what it is to be.
Well, in this little movie you saw General Marshall, who was the Secretary of State of the United States. He said a couple of important things. He talked about the political side of it, which is communism against capitalism. And also he was talking about the economy, about that America is the only economy in the world at that moment was very stable and strong, and that he needed to help Europe, and that's also so they could collaborate in the future. Well, the outline of the presentation, we're going next to first we have some statistics, then we will go to the purpose statement, then we have the arguments in favor, then I will tell something about the arguments against, and at the end we have the summary and the conclusion. Well, here we have some statistics. We show you this at the beginning of the presentation because we want to see you that it was a very large-scale operation. Many of you don't know about the Marshall Plan, we heard, so now you can see the amount of money that went into it. There are a few strange things, maybe for a few, because Germany and Italy are on 3rd and 4th place. The Netherlands are on 5th place, which makes what makes this strange, Germany and Italy, is because they were the opponent in the war. So for many it's very strange to give the most money to your enemy, at that time, but the goal of that was to, you know, the phrase, keep your friends close but your enemy closer. They wanted to make sure that they were never in the same position to start a world war again. And for the rest, yeah, you can see the amount of money that went into it. And from each year, it's in millions of dollars. And one note, it wasn't like they gave the money. It wasn't a gift. It was they loaned it. So everything needed to be paid back. Then we go to the next.
That is the purpose statement. I'm going to tell you our purpose statement. The Marshall Plan was the best solution to rebuild Europe economically after the Second World War. And now we're going to look at some arguments in favor. In the period of 1948 to 1952 was the fastest period of growth within the European history. That's mostly because of the Marshall Plan, because all of the countries got a lot of money, and yeah, they could do things with the money. Like, for instance, the agricultural production rose with 30%. In this graphic, you can see that. This is in 1948, after the war, and it goes up. In 1953, it's risen 30%. All of it because of the Marshall Plan.
One big note here is also Europe needed a lot of food, of course, because everyone was hungry. There was a lot of starvation at that time, so that's why this is one of the things that rose a lot. Agriculture production.
Well, next to agricultural production, there's also industrial production. We also have a graphic of it over here. This is in the period between 1938 and 1946. You can see most of the countries which were given the funds of the Marshall Plan, it rose up to 100% of what they got before the war. Industrial-wise, and like Michael just said, poverty became less. People got food because of the agricultural production. So that stopped poverty in all of the countries given Marshall aid.
Yeah, and also with this graphic, you see again Italy, Austria, and Germany. Those were again the enemies in the war, and the US made sure that they wouldn't grow too fast, so they could be stronger than these countries.
Yeah.
And keep an eye on that.
Well, another argument in favor is that it brought political stability, the Marshall Plan. Yeah, like you see here, communistic parties disappeared because of the Marshall funds. They could do a lot of things with the money, so the people in the countries of Europe became more satisfied, and communistic parties mostly rise when the residents of the countries are upset or angry at the current parties ruling the country. But because of the funds, people were happy, and they didn't get involved with communistic parties and didn't vote on them. So that's the reason why the Marshall Plan was a good help. Another argument in favor that it is the Marshall Plan brought European integration. It's the founder of what we know now as the European Central Government. It brought Europe's countries back together, and it was pretty much the founder of the EU as we know it right now.
Yeah, but then especially focus on the west side of it, because of course on the other side, on the east side, we had the Russians with their communistic ideas, which brought those countries together to the USSR as we knew it till 1990. So it's especially the west side of Europe. An argument against America giving too much aid. There was a lot of people didn't agree with the Marshall Plan because they thought America gave too much aid to Europe and that Europe would rebuild itself. However, that isn't the case. We think it was a good thing that America did that because Europe needed that money. Because if they didn't did that, we had 10 years of more poverty, more starvation. Of course, eventually we would rebuild ourselves, but the money which brought the Marshall Plan was a good help to make that go faster. And also the fighting communism, that was a very big deal at that time. That was a very big deal until the 1990s. And America had one goal in mind, and that was to prevent other countries from getting communistic, because that would mean that they couldn't trade with Europe, because they almost don't trade with communist countries. And of course, their power in the world would be a little less, and not power by imperialism, which is, well, you can go to the next idea, which is our next argument against. Because that was not the goal of the Americans, of course. They wanted to stay strong in the world because they're a big country and they want to have a lot of influence. But they also want to have good partners, and that's why they did help Europe, rebuilding Europe. The dollar is also one good example of one good thing that the Marshall Plan brought, because the dollar is now the European main or the worldwide reserve currency. So that means when another country, the value drops of their, how do you say it?
The value drops of
their money.
Their money.
Then this is the reserve. So that's also a good thing because it makes all the countries more stable, and it makes sure that everyone has a backup. Go to the next one.
I'm going to give a quick summary of our presentation. Well, why the Marshall Plan was a success is because it brought economic growth in all the countries which were given the funds. Also, it brought political stability, which prevented Europe becoming communistic. And European integration started as that's why we know the European Union as we know it now. The Marshall Plan was the founder of it.
And also one thing which I forgot with the earlier slide, it's also when you look at the communistic countries now, or who were communistic, and when you look at the countries who are capitalistic, you see that there's more poverty in the communistic countries and everything is less or is worse arranged, or something like that. Sorry. So that's also a big difference between communistic and capitalistic countries. So that's also one example why the Marshall Plan was a good idea.
Well, our conclusion. First, it's the answer to our purpose statement, so I'm going to repeat our purpose statement once again. Our purpose statement was the Marshall Plan was the best solution to rebuild Europe after the Second World War. And well, our conclusion is, well, it has been proven that it's the best solution because the goal was that it should prevent communistic parties to rise in Europe, and they had a fear that Europe became communistic, but it prevented that, so that's why it was the best solution for the United States.
Yeah, and they removed the trade barriers, which was also a goal. They rebuilt Europe, which was a goal which they succeeded in. And Europe very quickly became prosperous again, so we think the Marshall Plan was the best solution.
The best solution.
The best solution. I would like to thank you for your time, and are there any questions? So good.